I am Jackie Smedberg. I am a district literacy coach, and welcome back to a new school year. As I welcome you back, you may have noticed in your building that you have a lot of boxes in your library that came over the summer. Those are a leveled literacy intervention, also known as LLI from Fountas and Pinnell. On my learning plan over the summer, there was a 1 hour professional development that you could have done with your PLC, and it had 3 videos on it. Those videos were to help you unpack your LLI kit, whether it was new or already in your building, just to explore it and to really get a good feel as to what there is available to you in that kit. There were 3 videos. The first video was, what is LLI? And it gave you a quick overview as to the whole system itself, all the different levels that they have. The second video was what's in box 1, and I have box 1 here of the blue kit, so I have a little bit of the primary kits and I have a little bit of the secondary that we're going to be looking at with our time together. And the third video was what's in box 2 and beyond, which includes all the student books and the student resources. So that was available for your PLC for 1 hour on my learning plan throughout the summer. We have 2 guiding questions that bring us together today, and one is, do I know the materials I have available? 2, do I know how to use the materials? The reason we're offering this in multiple different formats is because if you are aware of the materials you have and you are ready to use them, when a student shows that they're not responding to your universal instruction, you're ready and you're able to deliver a Tier 2 intervention to them. There will be one other additional training for all elementary classroom teachers, and that will be put on by your building literacy coach and interventionist, and a district representative will also be there. So what that will be is that will be a really in-depth training talking about the lessons and the layout of the lessons. Let's dig in. So one of the things that we want to look at today is the system guide. And this comes in any kit that you get in box 1. So I have a red system guide open and available for us. And if I'm digging into box 1 to find it in a brand new kit, I can find the system guide in there as well. This one is still in the package, so a PLC can unpack this one. In the system guide, I ask you to open up your system guide to the table of contents. And what I'm going to ask that you do is I'm actually going to ask that you pause this video after I give the directions of what I'd like you to do, and I'd like you to really dig into what's in each section of your system guide. If your building has older versions of LLI, you might be able to find something similar but called a program guide. If it says, I want you to take a look and I want you to dig into the section headings that are in the system guide, and I want you to get a good feel as to what's in this book. The reason for that is this will be a go-to place for you if you have a question. Your literacy coach will be able to help you, but this is also a very good resource with a lot of good information. So I'm going to ask that you pause me now and take a look through the table of contents of the system guide. Thank you for exploring your system guide or your program guide a little bit more in depth so you know what's all in that resource for you. The next item I'd like to take a look at is the technology package. This technology package comes in the older kits. If you have some brand new kits, especially primary, you will notice that inside your system guide there is a scratch off. And on that scratch off there is a product key. That product key is also on the inside of your technology package down here. The reason I'm sharing that with you because if you're looking in your brand new kit for the technology package that you may have seen in the video, you're not going to find it. The reason for that is your building coach is taking all of those product keys and is going to create one building generic login. So everybody that needs LLI will have that. They'll be able to log in and look at all the professional resources that are available, the lesson resources that are available, as well as the general resources that are available in LLI. So thinking about those online resources, in the general resources, you have parent letters that you can send home with your small groups for every level that you're working through. You have connection materials such as homework that could go home or games that the students could play that connect to the word work activities that they're doing. There's a lot of options for online resources within the general resources list. In the lesson resources, you'll be able to find the recording forms, and those will be important as you are working with your small groups and you're looking to do your assessments. We'll get into that in a little bit. The next piece that I would like you to pull out is a lesson guide. That looks like this. So this is a newer version in the blue kit. And as I pull it out, what I would like to do, and what I would like you to do, is I would like you to open up your book, and I would like you to flip out each of the tabs that are in it. Let me show you. So I just flipped out this first tab. I'll flip in my book to the next one, and that tab says, Getting Organized for Efficient Teaching. I open the book up and flip this tab out, and I start with Level C. Pause me, open up all the tabs in all of your lesson guides. Depending on what kit you are in, you will either have 1, 2, maybe all the way up to 6. So take a couple minutes, pause me, flip out all the tabs within your lesson guides. You have all your tabs flipped out. If you have a student that was in a Tier 2 last year and it's documented within the paperwork of their Tier 2 that the Tier 2 needed to be continued, that was get started right away. If you have your levels flipped out, you have your books unpacked from the previous training, or your building already had it done, what you could do is you could flip to your level. If the student was reading at level D in this blue kit, I would flip to D. I'm going to show you up on the top a couple pieces of information that you'll need to get started. You will dig into this lesson in much more detail with your literacy coach in a few weeks, but just to get you started, you'll notice that you're on lesson 11 in level D. This was my first lesson when I flipped open that tab. Here's the goals of my lesson, little information about my book. Before you want to turn the page, you need to read the book. So you're going to go to the boxes or the filing cabinet where your books are. You're going to pull out lesson 11 and pull out lesson 12, and you're going to read the books. In this case, the new book is called The Drip. So I would pull that out, I would read that, and then I could start instructing my group. Notice this is very laid out in a framework for you to pick and choose what bullet points you're going to use to instruct that group based off of what you know of them as readers. You're going to continue on. You're going to follow this lesson the best that you can. You'll get much more in-depth training, like I said, on how to be more selective in your teaching with this, and you can continue through the lesson until you get to the end. The next day, you would start with lesson 12. All the directions are in here, so you'll have to do a little bit of reading if you're starting these interventions prior to your building having their professional development. But know that all of the lesson guides are in the lesson guide book for you, for the whole system that you have. And that is just one way to get started if you need to get started before you're building professional development. Another thing I wanted to show you about the lesson guides is that some buildings have taken their folder. So this is how the books are set up. Sometimes there are papers in because buildings have already used them, and if yours is just brand new starting out, you may not have books in, you may not have any additional resources in here yet. One thing to note is that sometimes these are not they don't stick and they don't stay very long. So if you take a permanent marker and you write on here, this is already red, so you don't need to label this red. In the blue, the folders are actually going to be blue, and all of the other kits aren't the same way. So you could just put lesson 1 up here in marker, and then you don't have to worry about the stickers falling off. It is going to be, in this example of what this school has chose to do, they have copied the lesson guide just for lesson 1 and put it in here. It is for teacher use, so they have copied just the pages for lesson 1 and put it right in the lesson 1 folder. So I really don't need my lesson guide at all if my building has decided to set it up this way. So in this case, I would say, okay, I'm going to start, this is red, level 1. I'm going to start at level L, so I'm going to go and grab this kit, this file. And if I'm starting out, I'm going to grab the 2 because it's a 2-day cycle for lessons. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to explore 2 books in your kit. Take a look at those 2 days of lessons and the books that go along with. Moving on, one very important thing about LLI is the books. And if you watch the Getting Started videos or the unpacking videos, you did hear them talk about how popular their books are and how engaging their books are. And they really are. I have worked with multiple students in tiered interventions with LLI, and they do enjoy the books. One thing to note is that in the intermediate kits, this is a red kit, you will have 6 colored books. They're set up for you to have 4 max in a group. 1 book would be for you, and then there's 1 additional book. In the primary kits, there is 4 colored books, and then you have the black and white take-home books, which are there 6 of. In one of the videos, they did say they could keep these at home. I would not recommend doing that, but in your kit 1, you do have book bags for students. And in this, you could put a note card right in here with the student's name, and they could put they would put their black and white books in here, and they could keep a few books in their bag at a time. So they might have 2 or 3 books that they've read with you already that stay in their bag so that they have multiple books to read at home each night. When students take books home, you will want to keep track of who has what, especially if you're giving them more than 1 book at a time. Each kit does have the book bags for students. Once you get into the intermediate grades, they do look a little bit different where it folds out so their whole notebook can go right in their bag as well. But for the primaries, their notebook normally does not go in that, just their books do. So as we're looking at this book, this is book 1 from the red kit. And I know that because this red bar means the red kit. It tells me the genre of the book, fiction and realistic in this example. This tells me book 1, and it tells me level L. It also tells me the total running words. Where it says book 1, I know that's going to go in file 1, where it says lesson 1. So on the actual file folder, it says lesson 1, and here it says book 1. If I take a look at book 2, I will notice that we have the red bar again. It says book 2, level J. So LLI cycles through instructional and independent levels for students, keeping in mind the scaffolding that they need to read the instructional level text versus the scaffolding that they need to be able to read the independent level text. On the black and white books, it tells you blue system, and it tells you book 112. So these are easy to put away as well. As I mentioned before, it is very important to read the text before working with the students. And one of the main reasons for that is because we are not teaching a book. We are teaching to the children's needs. Now that doesn't make any sense when I say that, because if we're teaching to the children's needs, why do you have to read the book first? Well, the reason for that is you don't know what's going to happen in this realistic fiction book unless you read it. So you might know that students struggle with following characters or watching how characters throughout the text. If you don't know how that happens in this story, your instruction might not be pulling the pieces that those students actually need or that student actually needs. So it's very important that the books are read before we work with students. All right, let's carry on with what else is included with the books. So I showed you lesson 1, I showed you lesson 2. As we move through the lessons in the intermediate kits, you will also come to a novel lesson, a novel unit. So this is an example of the red system again. This is the first novel unit that goes with level L, and you will notice, I'll show you a page in the book, that this text is more at an independent level when it comes to the novels. That is to allow students to bring together all of the learning that they've had through level L and apply it over a longer text. This is written to be completed in 4 days, so there is a 4-day novel unit at the end of every level in the intermediate kits, and that is not to be skipped. So if you're noticing that your students are working in L, or one student is working in L, and you feel like they're ready to move on, bring them to the novel and see how they do with holding on to the information that you've taught them already, and see if they're applying those strategies fairly independently in the novel before moving to the next level. Another piece that I wanted to point out in the intermediate kits is a test prep book. So this is an example of one test prep book, and on the inside it will have passages and questions that go with those passages. So although our state tests are now online, this is one way, if you want to. It is written to be a 4-day test prep unit. So you have 20 lessons. You have 4 for your novel and 4 for your test prep. Total 28 lessons for each level in the intermediate. I mentioned that there are 28 lessons per level in the intermediate kits. I'd like to mention that in the orange and the green kits, there is 10 getting started lessons. So lessons 1 through 10 in each of those kits are getting started lessons, and those have a lap book and then a set of books for the students for each of those levels. And then it goes into the levels that are in each of the systems themselves. That would be 10 lessons per level in orange, green, and blue. Something else to note is that LLI is built for the primary systems to have lessons that are 30 minutes in length. In the intermediate system, lessons are to be 45 minutes in length. That is how the lesson guide is laid out. If you need to modify that, you can talk to your building coach and have a conversation around that. On even lesson days, you're going to notice in the lesson guide, it talks about rereading and assessment. So I am going to pull out this folder, which is lesson 2, so that's an even lesson. And in this building, they had already run off the lesson guide, and then in each kit folder, they also have the reading record. And that is what the assessment is that is listed in the even lessons. So the reading record form sounds very familiar to a running record, but Fontes and Pinnell calls it a reading record. And it looks very similar to a benchmark. Your coach will be going over this in more detail in the September training, but if you need these forms for the assessments prior to your building rollout, feel free to see your coach and they'll be able to get you these forms for the lessons that you need. After you have the login and the password for the online resources, you'll be able to go in and print these and then save them in each of the even files for the lessons that you are going to be teaching. Another component that we need to talk about is the documentation of Tier 2 interventions that you will be doing with students. Those interventions need to be put into EduClimber. If you have not put an intervention into EduClimber, your building coach would be a great resource for you to go to. When you create an intervention in the upper left-hand corner of your screen in EduClimber, you'll be entering start and end dates for your intervention based off the needs of the students in your group, as well as you're going to be entering their instructional reading level goal. You'll be able to determine that after your September training. If you're doing an intervention prior to that, see your coach again. So as you complete the reading records with the students, you'll be completing them on a rotating basis. You'll just do one assessment per even lesson. When you complete that assessment, then in 2 days you would be doing an assessment with another student in the group. After you've completed a reading record with a student, you're going to go into EduClimber and enter that information in the progress monitoring section. That way, as you enter multiple data points, you'll be able to see a trend line of your students' growth and whether they're on track to meet the goal that you've set. If a student is not on target, that is a time you'll want to meet with your PLC or your building coach to talk about what changes might need to be made to the intervention to help that reader. Remember, if you have questions, you can always look back to your system or program guide to learn more about parts of the intervention. There's a frequently asked questions section in that book that is a great resource. And there's also a professional development section in that book. If your PLC is looking for something additional to do to get district points, you could look through that and create a calendar of meetings. Your PLC could put that in My Learning Plan, or even your building if you wanted, and you could go through some of that professional development that's listed there. I hope you enjoy the system. I hope you feel like you have enough information to get you started with groups. September date that's scheduled in your building will give you a really in-depth understanding of the lesson guides and how to be responsive to the needs of your students, because the ability to observe and interpret reading behaviors is foundational to being effective for the readers that we're working with. Have a great year, and feel free to reach out to me or the other district coaches also if you have other questions. Thank you.